Welcome to the Good Fight Podcast. I'm your host and TGF editor, Jason Langendorf. And today we're again joined by our friend, TGF contributor, Lucas Cattell. It is Friday, July 31st. And because boxing is going to boxing, we've got your latest 3-minute roundup. Earlier this week, Most Valuable Promotions and Matchroom Boxing announced a strategic alliance to create unprecedented opportunities in women's boxing. No doubt these are two of women's boxing's leading promoters, but I guess personally, I don't see the point or at least the need for a formal agreement in this case. But what do you make of this, Lukey?
I love the verbiage, strategic partnership, alliance, I don't know. It just feels to me like it probably was going to happen anyway, but it's a way for two really rich entities to say something at a media event, right? Doesn't it just feel like something like it's not just a press conference for one of the better fights, Michaela Mayer versus Chantel Cameron and Amelia Moore, Caroline Dubois. This is an announcement about what we're doing. I think that there's a story we're both monitoring in boxing, which is Zuffa and how Zuffa is shaking up other promoters. And I think the only thing that's fascinating to me is you're starting to see people play well together because of Zuffa. So like that's the only thing that I really look at it is how Zuffa is kind of bringing boxing together, because I think there is a fear that if people don't work together, it will just all be Zuffa.
Yeah, and I do wonder, how many of these fights would have happened regardless of any sort of strategic alliance. I don't know that anybody felt like we were missing big women's fights, and that's not to say that there aren't some that could be made and that I'd be excited to watch, but it seems like we've been getting enough good ones, at least percentage-wise compared to the men. It seems like an odd announcement other than, as you described it, sort of like a good excuse to say, hey, look, we're here. Look at what we're doing, which is fine. And maybe there's something we're missing, but yeah, at any rate, we'll keep an eye on that as time goes on. Something a little more clear cut. We saw a welterweight fight between Devin Haney and Keyshawn Davis get finalized yesterday. I don't know that it was one that the public was really clamoring for, but it's a really good matchup. Lukey, what do you think of the fight itself? Where would you like to see it land? What makes sense there? And who do you think has the edge in that matchup?
Well, my first observation was it might land a day before my birthday, which is like, happy birthday, me. Probably going to be working on my birthday. Like I always kind of like it when there's no major fights. I don't really go to big fights. So like I don't have some dying need for what city does this fight make sense for. I think that for me, the context of what this fight represented was there's kind of what would we say, like a John Woo standoff between Shakur Stevenson, Devin Haney, and Keyshawn Davis, to the extent of Devin and Shakur were linked with a fight. Now it's Devin and Keyshawn linked with a fight. We're waiting to see if the Keyshawn Davis and Devin fight happen. I think it's going to happen because it went to purse bid and all that. The purse bid being streamed was one of the most enjoyable experiences I have seen in a long time. I don't know if you want my breakdown of that one, but that was actually like a treat that I didn't know I needed in my life.
We've officially entered the 7th circle of hell.
I don't know. I really enjoy. Let me give you some of the things. I believe that. So it was Takeoff Promotions, Teofimo's promoter, and Top Ranks. I believe. Oh my God, I'm blanking on the president of the WBO. Nice guy, but I'm blanking on his name. But I believe he called him Martin and his name was Milton. So like we're starting off with like a wrong name. Then at the end of it, the Takeoff promotion is like, why isn't, and by the way, Takeoff Promotions offers like a good substantial 2 million and some odd change money, but Top Rank walked away with the bid with 8 million. And then they bring up the idea of, wait, why wasn't that envelope sealed? I mean, these are just things I need in my life, like these little X factor moments in boxing. So that was a real treat. As for the matchup, I think that realistically, Keyshawn Davis and Devin Haney is going to be a fight that's more interesting for people to talk about the personalities and the antics leading up. I think it's going to be a highly strategic fight. It's going to be a very important fight for who's the top youngster of this generation. But I think it's also that they're kind of both social media people, that it's going to be more engaging for people that enjoy just talk battles. I call it verbal volleyball. If you like the verbal volleyball from fighters, you're going to really be into this one because they're going to talk a lot and stuff. But the verbal volleyball might be a little bit better than the in-ring action, because I think there's going to be a lot of tension if the fight happens. And often when there's a lot of tension, the fighters don't just let their paws go and they don't fight maybe to the best of their ability. I think there's a lot of pressure on Keyshawn Davis in this one. You know, Devin's pretty used to these type of moments. I'd say Keyshawn probably has a little bit more, just like, I wouldn't say natural ability, but like he probably has a little bit more that he can do, but he lacks the experience at this level. And Devin's one of the hardest workers I've ever seen. So it's a fascinating matchup because it's like they're from the same era, but they're from different eras, if that.
Yeah, and I think it's not often that we see guys like this who both have this kind of like quickness and craftiness at this level go against each other, and they both are capable of counterpunching, and I just, neither one of them has seen a lot of guys that look like the other in the ring. So I do think there's going to be a lot of kind of sizing each other up and all of the pre-fight stuff that you're talking about, which that leans right into Lukeyville. That's, you live for the chaos. Which, and by the way, if we're gonna go full John Woo, I want to see these like doves flying out before the fight and the whole nine.
I'll give you two keys to victory for this one. For Keyshawn Davis, it's maturity. There's a high cringe factor at times with Keyshawn Davis. And I think to beat someone like Devin Haney, he has to show a lot of maturity, both in the ring and out of the ring in the lead up, because especially like Bill and Devin are going to look for vulnerabilities in him and really wear on him as the fight goes. And for Devin, I think there's still questions from some about his ability to absorb punches. So to me, it's not about X's and O's. It's like, can Devin take away Keyshawn Davis's power? And can Keyshawn Davis show maturity at the highest level of the sport? Or where he's at with the weight and some of his antics after the fight and stuff. I think that this is a fight where Keyshawn has to really lock in and be a true professional to win. And Devin has to answer some questions from the Ryan Garcia fight if this were to happen.
Yeah, I think that's the most compelling thing for me, is seeing what Haney looks like against, another truly top guy who's at least theoretically at his level. Davis, I mean, you talk about the professionalism. He's missed weight, a couple times now. And obviously, as you mentioned, kind of the antics will
the
kind of
Albright after the fight, and
brothers jumping
it's
in,
just
all that, yeah.
It's just, there's just a level of lack of maturity, and he's getting to that age range where we want to see a little bit more growth and development from a change.
And he wouldn't be the first guy who's figured it out and kind of moved on to bigger and better things. So we don't get a whole lot of them at his level. So I think everybody's kind of rooting for that, if nothing else, just for boxing's sake. Even more straightforward. Let's get your picks for this weekend's big fights. Couple of not blockbusters, but I think potentially entertaining fights. We've got Lamont Roach Jr. Going up against William Zepeda. I think kind of a nice style matchup there, and then Raymond Murataya against Robson Conceição. What are those two fights? How are they shaping up for you, Lukey?
Well, I love this whole card, and I got some deep cut potential underdog upset picks. I actually broke some news on Twitter today, I think, unless my source was wrong. Felt good being a breaking news guy, but we'll get to that in a second. Look, I'm highly biased when it comes to the Roach family. Lamont Roach Sr. is someone I care about. I've gotten to know him, Ben Johnson, Lamont Jr., all of them, right? But William Zepeda is also one of my guys that I really like because he's a humble guy who lets his hands do the talking. And in, like, the way he fights, you can't shortchange the way he trains, right? Because it's like when you have a lot of volume and you're physically tough, you can't just phone it in the gym. My gut feeling is people are misreading who Lamont Roach is, and they're coming up with the narrative that he just doesn't do enough in fights, and that's the reason for the draws. I thought he pretty clearly won his last two fights, and I think that this is a momentum fight. I think Roach has a lot of momentum despite coming off two draws. And I think Zepeda really got up for Shakur Stevenson because he thought he had a chance to win it. But if you remember before that, he had two fights with Tevin Farmer, who Tevin at this point doesn't move as much and does a lot of the same things Lamont Roach does. And in the first fight, Tevin dropped Zepeda. So I think Zepeda might be feeling the effects of a very physical style and might be starting to kind of be on the back nine. And I think that Lamont is going up and ascending to the best that he can be. So I think you're going to see Lamont really impress people. I'd like it to be a fight of the year, but I think it's going to be a little bit more one-sided for Lamont Roach, with the only X factor being if Zepeda starts throwing a lot of punches, it makes fights tough. Now I'm going to answer your second question. Raymond Muratalla versus Robson Conceição. I love this fight. I feel like, and not just because I wrote about Robson, because he's got a soft spot in my heart for him, made the crazy comparison to him and Abe Lincoln, which you masterfully edited and made it an even more outstanding piece. To me, this is the worst type of fight for Muratalla's next fight. Muratalla probably should win this, but Robson never gets the memo to not show up to fights. And he's coming into lightweight. No one ever gives him credit. One of the best matchmakers ever, Brad Goodman, kind of summed this fight up best at the press conference, where he said, neither of these guys talk a lot of trash, so people are looking at it like it's an A-side, B-side fight, like Muratalla is going to walk all over him. You look at Robson, the only time he got blown out in a fight really was when Shakur beat him, and Shakur came in heavy for the weight, and who knows what that did to Robson in the buildup. He's an Olympic gold medalist. He's a mentally strong guy. He's probably like one of the best on the scale guys. Like, he's got the body I have right now when he takes his shirt off. And, you know, he's one of these guys that people don't give him enough credit, because just because he doesn't have a big name, he's really tricky. He's really deceptive. I think he's going to win some early rounds. It's up to Muratalla, because here's the thing about Muratalla. Muratalla had the fight of his career against Andy Cruz. It's so hard to piggyback off a great win and then go into another win and do that. And he's had some moments where he's had tough fights, when he fought Johnny the Wasp and when he fought Tevin Farmer. So it's not like he hasn't shown vulnerabilities in his career. And these are the marks of, are you an elite pound for pound guy, or are you a good champion? So for me, this is a huge fight for Muratalla. And Robson is really one of those guys I'd be afraid of, because he's playing with house money. And when you let him play with house money, as we saw in the Navarrete fight, he fought him to a draw. He was playing with house money. So to me, this is like possibly the best fight on the card, is the co-feature. And everyone's telling me I'm crazy for thinking like that.
I don't know. I mean, you usually get these calls right. And I think, look, for my money, if nothing else, we've got one of the most underrated nicknames in boxing on that in that fight, Camarón. Anybody who calls himself the Shrimp, you got to look out for him, and I got to watch him. Zepeda, I get a kick out of watching him fight. He says that he's going to be more patient in this fight.
Don't love that.
We'll see what that looks like. But
yeah, I don't love it. It's like, what brings you to the dance? It's like, yeah, I'm a 3-point shooter, but in this one, I'm going to be passing the ball and I'm going to be more conservative with my shot. I mean,
I'm going to unleash my defense on you.
I'm just saying, sometimes fighters know what time it is, and they kind of give you some insights. And that's like my fear right now. Is Zepeda is one of those guys that I absolutely love, but I feel like there's some signs that he might not be where he was a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Well, we shall see. Well, so we're going to flip the page of what we've been doing this week. So on the Good Fight Substack this week, and that is at thegoodfight12.substack.com. You can find a whole lot of different content that we've been cooking up, including Bill Detloff's really fun piece entitled "Hell Yes, I'll Watch Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua." And as he said more than once, and you will too. And I think he's right. And then Lukey, you alluded to your excellent read on Conceição, called Hobson Conceição, an American story, which, yeah, you've got to check it out just for the Abe Lincoln comparisons, and you tie a bow on it, you land the plane. So I think it's worth showing up for. It's worth the price of admission for that one.
I mean, that's my passion. People don't know that. People think I'm just a boxing guy. Probably my deepest passion in all of life in researching is American presidents. Like, that's probably like my deepest passion. Like, give me a John Tyler book. I'll sit in an afternoon, sit in a chair and read it. You
know? Who's your Andrew Jackson comp?
In terms of boxing?
Sure.
I feel like Andrew Jackson or Andrew Johnson is kind of like a comparison to Trump right now. If we're going to say like if
you're going
president,
other presidents,
Old Hickory. Who would be Old Hickory? Because like what the qualifiers for Old Hickory would be, like you need someone that's a little reckless, a little bit of a good old boy. They have to like embody the spirit of people. Well, look.
As Harden VR says in the comments here, Andrew Jackson sucked, and Andrew Johnson sucked too.
They both sucked. They just sucked in different ways. Because Johnson, I believe, took away 40 acres and a mule. Right? That was Johnson. One of Johnson's.
Or Jackson.
That was Johnson.
I'm getting mixed up
Jackson. Jackson was the one that did Trail of Tears. We're turning this into American history. Yes. So he took away the Indians' property and did the Trail of Tears, and all that. Let me think. Who would embody? And give me a second. Let me think about this.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one. All right, hold on. So let's finish off what we've got for the rest of the week. You also get a bonus episode of Ring Theory 2.0 from Eric Raskin and Bill Detloff, and Lukey and I will be back at it again Saturday night after the DAZN and TNT broadcasts of Road Cepeda with the TGF post-fight live stream show. Everybody should show up for that live, but if you can't, we will have it up on the YouTube channel shortly thereafter. But Liliana Ulloa and Norm Fraunheim, a couple of our awesome correspondents, will both be in Vegas and could make an appearance, and we should get some interviews, maybe some press conference coverage out of that. So join us to ask questions, chop it up, goof around after the fights live, or check us out again on our YouTube channel. That channel is at The Good Fight 12. And Lukey has a number of interviews with this week's undercard fighters and some interesting prospects that are going to be going up soon. So give that a look later tonight after we get all the videos up and posted. Subscribe to the channel and to our Substack to support the best in independent boxing journalism. It really does help us, even if you just follow us, subscribe on YouTube, sign up for a free subscription to the Substack. You don't get everything, but you get a good amount of free stuff that we post for you. Even that honestly helps get the word out. And we're going to have some referral programs that may help you get a month or two free, just if you want to see everything, kind of what we have to offer over time and see if it's worth your while. But I promise you, for $10 a month, you're not going to get anything like what we deliver to you. So, all right, I stalled for long enough, Lukey. That's all. That's the best I can give you. Do we have an Andrew Jackson comp?
Okay, so I don't have I think maybe like, yeah, I don't know, because like the problem with Jackson and Johnson as presidents is there's like baggage of moral for some people, they view it's almost like Trump, right? You can't compare a boxer to Trump without like some baggage of how people feel with their moral compass. So it's kind of a hard one because it could like overshadow someone's fight career. So I don't fully feel comfortable doing that
I don't
unless
know
like
that
I
we
find
have one. I don't know that we have a. I mean, we could probably pick some MMA fighters, but I don't know that we
the
have a
50s
clear
or
cut.
60s. There
I
has to
mean,
be a guy.
oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, if we go back far enough, for sure. Um, I don't know, maybe Jake Paul.
I saw a great well, Jake Paul I think is like the Trump figure of boxing currently, but like I saw a great one tweet from an MMA guy. I don't even know who his name was, but I guess there's a sparring clip of like an MMA guy beating up a boxer who's 19-1 or something. And he's like, yeah, this just proves MMA guys are so much better than boxers. And it, to me, like, I don't even care because like, we don't even have to address that. It's just like kind of an ignorant opinion. And I feel like it's also meant to rage bait people. And like,
Right.
it's an engagement tweet, right? It's meant to be like, let me engage with you. But I think the deeper thing I thought about was that might be why Zuffa Boxing's having trouble right now. Is like that is the core audience of the UFC is like deep down inside, boxing isn't a fist fight. It's if we go to the
Oh, I see
alley,
what you're
you
saying.
can't,
Okay.
I'll take you down, brother, and then I'll choke you out. Like, and I think that's some of the
They're only getting
resistance.
a fraction of the combat the sports that they could be getting from MMA.
Yeah, I think that like MMA was marketed as like this is as real as it gets, brother. Two guys go in an alley, only one guy comes out. And
I love
like
the
it's
brother. It's always brother.
yeah. Well, I mean, that was the marketing, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
when you go to boxing with Zuffa Boxing, I think there's an inherent person that's like, I love Dana. He's a straight shooter, but I don't know about this boxing stuff. It's not a real fight. There's too many rules. What if they hit the ground? What if a guy gets him in a toe hold? It feels incomplete. And I think that like I was looking at that tweet and it kind of made me wonder about like where boxing is going because I think there's a subsection of people that Zuffa Boxing is supposed to be marketed from the UFC fan that simply will never watch it because they want to see like the most complete street fight ever. And I don't even know why I brought that up, but that was something I was thinking about because I think culturally the UFC was built on that belief, and there's going to be people that don't want to watch boxing because they believe that.
Yeah, I think there may also be something to the idea that there's sort of a and look, I'm somebody who believes they can coexist. I don't have any sort of inherent issues with MMA, but I think there's sort of a lower barrier to entry for MMA. It's a much, much younger sport. Um, it doesn't have the history that boxing does, and it's also far less nuanced. You can you can see a little bit more. I'm not saying that you understand all the strategy or that you see every, if somebody's setting a trap, whatever. But you can see some of these different disciplines, the different martial arts that are brought to the table. And oh, he's wrestling now. They're it's ground and pound or this, that, or the other. Boxing, it's everything is on your feet. Everything is okay. I'm throwing either a right or a left, and yeah, but like there's obviously a great deal more that goes into it. And I don't know that if you're not a sort of a lifelong boxing fan, or if you haven't made the commitment to kind of deep dive into the strategy of boxing, it's hard to see what's going on there unless it's George Foreman or Randall Bailey, one punch is like, okay, yeah, I know what happened there. Uh, Everything else is sort of like, okay, there is some kind of a chess match going on here, and it can be difficult to pick up on. And I think with MMA, it's just like there's blood, there's fireworks, there's Joe Rogan screaming from the side. It's a little bit easier to sort of hop into and say, all right, yeah, I'm in, let's go.
Yeah, I mean it's got a little bit of like what's the word? Like it's the easier barrier entry, like you said. Like it's just like it's in your your face. It's fast, it's quick. You know, boxing, you got my guy, old man Lara, out there, and he's got a stick of dynamite in his left hand. And if you don't come in on him, he hits you in the face with his jab. And then the minute you take a step in, all of a sudden you're knocked out, and people go, "Where did it come from?" And it's like, well, that's what Lara does. Yeah. And I do get what you're saying is like, if I put it on and like somebody doesn't watch boxing, their immediate reaction is typically, this is boring, unless it's like one of the best fights. And then if I'm around people that watch boxing or I grew up boxing with, everyone's fascinated at like, what are they really trying to do? And it's almost, I think boxing to me is like
me watching soccer.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like if someone's speaking French in the room with me. Like, I don't understand French, but then if I start to pick up words, all of a sudden you go, okay, this is interesting. You know, I can communicate. And I think it's almost like a different language.
Yeah, I agree. And I will say, and then we'll get out of here, but I want to address Harden DR's comment here. He says, Zuffa boxing's problem is that it's run by people who seem to not really know what they're doing. I only half agree with that. I'll push back on that a little bit because I think what Lukey just said, the idea that the UFC is fast and aggressive and coming at you, and the production value's been there. In that sense, they really know what they're doing, and they have figured out how to sell fights. They don't know boxing. I think that's pretty clear, or they certainly don't know it as well as they do MMA, or as well as the sort of legacy promoters understand boxing. But I do think they bring something to the table. And Lukey, you and I have been talking about this lately, the idea that the rest of these boxing promoters who've been around for quite some time, they probably have something to learn from Zuffa. And that'll ultimately be a good thing for boxing, I think.
Look, I'm not opposed to Zuffa, and everyone's always been kind of down, but I'm not opposed. I'm just going to say my opinion. And I think that the people over there, including one of my favorites is Chuck Bossecker. He's a real smart guy when it comes to boxing. The problem with Zuffa I see is it's a corporate. So whenever there's corporate, it's not like they're going to be like, hey, boxing expert guy, let's just lean on you. It's like a corporation. They go to shareholders and there's meetings. So it's never going to be, I think part of what guys like you and me and a lot of boxing fans like are janky club show things or odd environments and stuff like that. And I think the problem is with Zuffa at times it feels very sterile because it's corporate.
A little too glossy.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of the boxing people don't always get to use their boxing knowledge because of the corporate environment. Now, I think they're making really good, entertaining cards top to bottom that are really, really fun to watch. And it's forcing fights like this weekend, where if we look, Quentin Randall versus Raul Curiel, who I got to check, but someone texted me and I put on Twitter, the Curiel missed weight. Quentin Randall's a really good fighter. I know that people say, oh, he's not exciting. Guess what? Exciting doesn't always matter. He's a great fighter. Aaron Coley, I did an interview with him. He was in the gym with me years ago. He's fighting a 22-year-old at middleweight. Yes, Aaron's 35. Southpaw that just had a draw, and he believes he beat Wendy Toussaint. Wendy Toussaint beat Joe Hicks, who's fighting Troy Isley. These are really well-made fights that we weren't simply seeing a year ago. Zuffa is forcing other people to have to make good fights. It's get down or lay down. You have to get down with making good fights or you're out of the game. And I think that's a net positive. I think the concern is, does Zuffa respect the boxing culture and the history that us as fight fans like? That's where I think there's a disconnect, is some people feel as though, and maybe I'm editorializing this, but it's, do they respect and honor the history that you and me respect, or are they going to create their own history and their own context, which I'm not sure I'm completely on board with, partially because I want my life to matter. I want my viewing history to matter. And I think that's where there's a disconnect, but I think Zuffa has really kind of helped the sport be more interesting.
Yeah, I think it's one of those don't throw the baby out with the bathwater situations. We don't have to love all the people involved or their politics. There are definitely some problematic elements attached to Zuffa, and that's something we'll be addressing before long, to the extent that we haven't already addressed it. But I think you can still, it's like you hear the old line about, good people do bad things, bad people do good things. Like you can, more than one thing can be true. And what Zuffa is doing, some of what Zuffa is doing is absolutely a net positive for boxing. And if it means we get better matchups in the long run, if it means we get better production, but then hopefully we still get some of the jankiness and some of the textured fun stuff that we're used to from boxing. It'd be nice to kind of meet somewhere in the middle on that. And like you said, like, let's embrace the history. But yeah, I think anytime, and we've seen it before, PBC, we've seen others try to jump in and do some new things or shake up the old order. I think that's always a good thing. I think at the very least, you don't want monopolies. You don't want people getting complacent and thinking that their way is the only way. The irony there is that Zuffa wants to do exactly that. They want to create a monopoly, set up a structure in which they get to do what they want exclusively, and you sort of get on board or get out. And I personally, I think there are too many entrenched promoters and too much history in boxing. That's guys like you and me. I don't think there are going to be enough boxing fans who get on board with what Zuffa is trying to do for them to fully take control the way that they seem to want to. But if we can get some of the good, and at the end of the day, boxing is a little better for it, then, the sport, you can't complain about that.
Well, I'm gonna throw a tangent, and I know you're like, oh, buddy, but I think the issue with boxing is we never use this word grow boxing. We're never like, we need to get boxing out there and get more boxing fans. It's always like, how do these $1 million fighters make more millions? The idea is never, how can we put forth matchups, or how can we grow boxing? Because that's something in golf. I hear this conversation all the time. How can we grow the game? How can the game expand? In boxing, it's almost like, how can we shrink boxing? How can we make it even smaller? How can we make it more niched? Make it more, it's like you're getting a PhD. Let's make a microscope and just hone in on one little tiny thing. And at a certain point, we're going to just be too obscure. So it's like, I would like to see us really think in the concept of, how can we grow boxing? How can we share our passion for boxing? How can we make boxing more exciting to the average person? And I think Zuffa, to certain extents, does that. I think Salida Promotions has done that. I think Pro Box TV has done that. I think various promoters have done that. But I just think that concept needs to be stated more, because a lot of times people talk about, oh, it's a business, it's this and that. I think we need to change that conversation to, how can we grow the sport of boxing and make it more accessible to.
Yeah, and it's frustrating because I'm the leading proponent of who gives a shit about the business, who gives a shit about purse bids. I don't care about all the stuff that happens, out of the ring. I truly, it does not matter to me. Now, I understand all those things affect the sport. I understand there are people who have to have good intentions, or at least enough foresight and enough investment in boxing succeeding to help the sport move forward. But it's a conversation that I just think there's too much business involved in boxing, period. I think the fans have been sucked into that story far too much. And I think it's become almost like fantasy sports to them. And everyone now is an armchair expert. Look, I've been doing this a long time, and I'll be the first to admit, I don't know what's going on more than half the time behind the scenes. There's just no way that we can understand what some of these people are up to. we can speculate, we can go off of history, we can, you know, we can try to connect the dots. But I think particularly if you're, you know, if you're just sort of like shooting your shot, winging, you think, oh well, this didn't happen, so these guys must be up to that. There are usually good reasons for things happening the way that they do in boxing, and they're almost always attached to money. Um, and I think that's the biggest problem with getting enough people moving in the same direction to do what's best for the sport is, as you said, it's fragmented. You know, there are too many. Well, I can't say too many, but everyone saw what Floyd did a few years ago. Floyd Mayweather. Everyone saw the kind of money that Manny Pacquiao made, and became the face of boxing. Canelo's kind of duplicated that. There have been enough guys who have been some sort of facsimile of that in recent years, and that's the holy grail for a lot of these fighters. And the people involved in the business of boxing try to attach themselves to those fighters and enrich themselves off of that. And that's fine up to the point that it's like, look, if we're providing services to each other, that's fine. At the same time, if that harms boxing along the way or keeps it from evolving the way it needs to, there need to be people involved who are trying to actually, uh, you know, look out for the sport, that are trying to, um, forward the sport in the way that you and I know needs to be done. We don't necessarily have all the answers, but we understand kind of what the sport's up against, and there just aren't enough people involved right now who are doing that. One thing I want to get to before we go, Damo made a comment here, said, and I think it's referring to Zuffa, not landing well in the UK, which you can see by the British fighters they're signing, names, not capabilities. Um, I agree with that up to a point. I also think you look at a guy like Edgar Berlanga, and it was one fight, but I'll be honest with you, I was pretty impressed with him. I was impressed with his jab. I was really impressed with his left hook. I was impressed with the way that he used it. Um, he had that moment, I think it was in the third round. He kind of fell back into like, we're gonna have a firefight, and I'm gonna wade in, and I'm gonna outpunch you. But for the most part in that fight, he showed a certain amount of discipline, a certain amount of patience, and a certain amount of technical acumen, I thought. Um, we hadn't seen that from him before, or certainly not at that level. Um, I'm not I'm not here to say that Zuffa has developed those elements in Berlanga, but I do think if you can get the right guys at the right time, if you make the right choices in your signings, those things can go well for you in a way that you know you and I wouldn't expect. And to be honest, that main event was a fun fight to watch. We don't get enough of those. We get a lot of one-sided garbage or fights that just aren't all that much fun to watch and unsatisfying outcomes. Um, I think anybody, you can say that it wasn't done at the highest level, but I don't think anybody can argue that that wasn't an entertaining fight. And I think that's one of the elements that Zuffa brings that we don't see enough of right now in boxing.
I think also it's like, Berlanga, where does he go in the sport, right? And I think that the genius of Zuffa is there's guys like Berlanga who have a big name, but they're coming off a loss or whatever, or people label them as this. And it's really a chance to reintroduce themselves. And Berlanga was in 2021, he was like one of the hottest guys in boxing. And I think the tough thing with Berlanga is he went from being someone who intimidated guys with first round knockouts to really searching for an identity. After he lost his knockout streak, it looked like we had a world title contender who was trying to figure out who his identity was as a fighter. I think Coach Mark is a great coach with him, and I think he's really, really solid. But I think that it's tough where you go from like, you think that you're Superman knocking everybody out, sleeping stuff, and then all of a sudden you can't stop a guy. And I think that that's probably been the most interesting thing was it felt like he found a bit of his identity in the fight with Butler, is that he found something. And hopefully he can continue on that, because that to me, I think a fighter's identity is one of the most important things in the ring. When guys don't know who they are, I think the most dangerous is you get a guy who can't punch and they go, "Oh, I'm going to fight on the inside and show him I can punch." That's the most dangerous thing. But the second most dangerous thing is when people don't really know what their identity is. They don't know if they're a pressure fighter, a boxer, this and that. And I think that Berlanga, when he got dropped and kind of chuckled, he found something, because I think that up until this point, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, I think that when fights got hard, he would try to either get more intense or get a little bit dirty. And that was his adjustment. And in this fight, he just improved. So I was impressed by that with Berlanga.
Yeah, and Damo, just to sort of back into Zuffa one more time, I actually think if you think about Berlanga and his career arc and where he's at now and what might lie ahead, another thing that I appreciate about Zuffa and I guess the UFC is that you can have a loss, you can have a couple of losses, and you can still be valuable to the promotion and to the sport. You can be matched with the right fighter, and people are still going to come out. They're still going to tune in. People want to watch those fights, and they wind up being more often than not entertaining fights. And I think Dama, what you're talking about in the UK, that's actually something the Brits actually have that right. It's something that in the American culture, going back to Mayweather, the undefeated, this, that, all that other nonsense. I mean, if everybody is trying to protect their zero, then boxing loses, period. That just because we're never going to get the best fights. We're not going to get a bunch of guys, a bunch of undefeated guys fighting each other when they should. And I'll say, in England, those guys get teased a lot. I'm on the front end of that sometimes. Their fighters oftentimes, travel. Guys who've been built up, maybe a little overhyped, sometimes get their asses beat, come back domestically. They still have careers because people get behind those fighters. In England, they root for the person. They're not rooting for a record. They're not rooting for some sort of mystique. They like the guy. I mean, why do you think Ricky Hatton? I mean, one of the reasons that he is who he is, it's the person that he was. It was the humility, the lunch pail, blue
He
collar
was one of
guy.
the guys.
Yeah,
He was one
he
of the
was one of
boys.
us. And
There's only one Ricky Hatton.
that's right. And if Americans, I think, locked into fighters that same way, I think fans, if they realized how many of these guys, it's like, and these are guys at high levels who have to get up and go to work every day. Like they're getting up at 4 a.m. to go do their road work. Then they go train. Then they go work 8 hours at whatever, at a mechanics shop, at Costco, and whatever, for the city. And then they go back and they train some more. And then they're lucky if they get enough sleep in and then get up and go do it all the next day again. I don't know how you can't root for guys like that. Especially when, people are complaining all the time about NFL and NBA players making all this money. It's like, hey, if you want to get behind somebody, these are the guys to get behind. Shakur Stevenson he's fine. Shakur Stevenson's going to be fine. I don't know. Take your pick. Alexander Usyk, like these guys. You can like Usyk for other reasons, but I mean, the guys at the top of the sport who are making boatloads of money, who are sort of at this point kind of hand selecting fights, not terribly interesting to me, to be honest with you. But the guys who are seeking out, the smoke, as they say, legitimately, who are like, look, let's take on all comers. Like, who do you got? And sometimes these are the guys that are just coming up out of, sort of regular life, like you and me, just trying to, check the check. And it's like, man, how does this sport not more popular than it is? But that's me.
Let me give you an example, and it's going to tie into the Good Fight YouTube page later today. Quentin Randall told me that he took 2 fights in Houston where he made no money because he basically, his ticket sales covered his fights to stay active because he felt inactivity had plagued him, so he couldn't have the performances he wanted. His opponent, Raul Curiel, is signed to Golden Boy Promotions, came in 1.2 pounds overweight for this fight. Welterweight bout comes in at 148.2. I received a mysterious text message from someone that kind of informed me on that one. So I broke the scintillating news on X. Everyone was waiting for that one, right? But here you have a guy in Quentin Randall who was late to boxing, faced incarceration at an early age, learned how to box starting out through Ring Magazine tutorials from Bernard Hopkins while serving time, takes a blue-collar approach to boxing, takes a few losses. Most people would be like, your career's over. You got 3 losses. Like, where are you going? No promoter's going to invest in you. Doesn't listen, invests in himself, makes no money, fights in these small rinky-dink shows to get his experience. And now he's taking on Curiel, who missed weight. And this could be a life-changing opportunity for him. This could be a major moment in his career. I just think the issue is not enough people care about I shouldn't say not enough people. The fight fans are amazing. Boxing fans are amazing. And I'm not even pointing the finger at all reporters, but I think the issue is that maybe promoters don't promote fighters enough to know what the stories are. And the reporters aren't aware of some of the stories because maybe they're not as comfortable around the fight teams where they don't hear the organic stories. And I think that it's a disservice to the fans when they don't know of the story of a Quentin Randall or of a story of Hobson Conceição or even Zepeda and Roach, who both had their own journeys, and only prop up the shiny prospect, undefeated guy. And like you said, he's picking a guy who's got a good record, but stylistically he's got every single advantage over him. And you keep talking about, oh, I think he could be a champion. When really, I think we're all fans of Rocky and we're all fans of underdogs. And we want that. Take it from the man moment. You screwed him over. And I think that boxing's missing a little bit of that we don't always hear those stories that resonate with people, the blue collar guy. So I wanted to go full circle and say Quentin Randall kind of embodies that, and he'll be fighting tomorrow. And we're going to have some 11-minute interview with him while he was cutting weight. Super exclusive.
That's fantastic. All right. I'm jacked to see that. So you've got your guy to root for tomorrow, Quentin Randall, 17-3-1. Lukey had the weight cutting interview,
the exclusive news on the weigh-in. Breaking news reporter.
There you go. Well, I think those are the stories that, and we know a handful of PR folks who get it. But there is sort of a lost art of connecting reporters with good stories, and also, to be fair, reporters oftentimes don't connect themselves or do the homework. You are someone who spends a lot of time in the gym. You spend a lot of time chasing down folks on the phone, staying in touch, texting. More than anybody I know, to be honest with you. I'm guilty of not being as in tune with that. But I think one of the things that we all love as reporters and writers and storytellers is sharing those details, finding something like that and letting the public know. Because look, if you're a boxing fan, whether you want to watch boxing or you don't, even whether I myself am in love with boxing, I mean, the human condition is it's universal. It's, you know, that's you can appeal to 100% of readers or viewers based off of a story like that. And it's, again, it's why Rocky resonates. So you got a guy like Quentin Randall, like, you know, I don't want to say there are 100 of them out there, but there are a lot of Quentin Randalls out there whose stories we don't know yet. Um, and you know, I'm going to put my hand up. I'd love to hear about them. So if there are more Quentin Randalls out there, you know where to find me. You know where to find Lukey. We love telling those stories, and we love fighters because we know where they come from. We know they're tough as balls, and we know they're usually good dudes from hard circumstances, and sometimes not just dudes, sometimes women. Um, and yeah, that's what we're here to do, is tell those stories. So
Another one is Aaron Coley on this card. Aaron Coley's taking on a 22-year-old kid, undefeated, who sparred Munguia and Diego Pacheco and Canelo. All these guys on paper. Aaron is probably about 35 now. I was around him in the gym in his prime. He's a southpaw. And I mean, you're talking about someone, and albeit whatever, gym, nostalgia, he's hard to hit, man. He's just, I compare him to a spider in his prime. He was able to move, and it was like you couldn't ever get a good shot on him. And he kind of talks to you, but he talks in a real subtle way where he's kind of sarcastic. And it, like, I remember he was the king of, he wanted to get you to put your foot in a tire. So there was a tire in the middle of the ring, and you had to put your foot in, and nobody could hit him because he knew how to get his foot in the tire, but he knew how to keep his distance. And to me, it's like when you make a fight with a 22-year-old, are you banking on that guy's got too much mileage? Because Aaron's like everything I would keep a 22-year-old away from. A veteran, southpaw, confident. It's like I wouldn't put a young kid in with a southpaw like that. I would keep him away. The two guys, little Lukey, not that I'm ever going to be a manager, but the two guys I wouldn't put fighters in with are southpaws that can box, that have a lot of respect in their region, and people that have a really good right hand. It doesn't matter what their record says. If you got a good right hand can ruin a prospect. So those would be like the two types of guys I'd keep them away. So the fact that a 22-year-old kid is fighting Aaron, super impressive to me from Fabian Guzman. If he wins, I'm like, that's a guy. But I mean, he's got his work cut out for him because 22 years old, it's hard to fight a tricky fighter. I know you think you know stuff and you're young, but I'm telling you, man, when you get in with those southpaws, not that I ever did it at a high level, but I'm looking at my cut over my left eye and it makes me feel tougher, is southpaws have a way of just making you feel like everything you've learned doesn't work. Like, it's hard to explain it, but like you get in there and you're doing things and you're like, wait, that's my move and I'm getting hit. Like, that's my move that I do. And and like the other thing about southpaws, and it's cliche, they see a gazillion orthodox fighters and you see about 4 southpaws. Right. And like, a lot of guys would say when I was coming up that like southpaws now are like Mercedes Benzes in the 80s. So like in the 80s, Mercedes Benz was like a big deal, but now every day there's a southpaw. But I'd say not all southpaws are created equal. When you run into a tricky southpaw, you're like, no, it's one of them. Because there's a lot of guys that convert to southpaws, but their feet don't work with their hands, and you can kind of get over on them because they don't. But when you get in with a real southpaw that knows how to move, it just isn't fun because they just know how to make it ugly, and like the distance is off and where your head is. And I know this is real boring inside stuff, but it's like when I think about a young fighter with a young temperament, he's probably thinking, I'm going to go in there, push a pace on Aaron, break him down, and maybe he can do more credit to him if he does it. But I know Aaron's like, I'm going to give this guy some calculus and let's see how he does on the exam. He's going to see one thing, but it's really another thing. And to me, that's kind of an interesting fight. And we talk about the levels of viewing a fight. That's the levels of viewing a fight is, can this kid's will and does he have the strategy to break down an older fighter? Or does the older fighter start to present problems where this kid's going back to his corner like, hey, what's going on, coach? And that's something I'm looking at.
Well, we'll enjoy looking out for all of that this weekend. We're now pushing an hour, which I think this is about twice as long as we've gone on this. It's just you and
Oh
me,
yeah.
just you and me riffing today, but it's all good. But do come to the Substack, check out what we're doing. Again, you can check out the YouTube channel at the Good Fight 12. The Substack is thegoodfight12.substack.com. Anything you can do in terms of subscribing, it's all free unless you want everything, and then it's a premium product. But even then, it's you're talking about a fancy cup of whatever you prefer at Starbucks once a month, and you've got about 10 contributors coming at you pretty regularly. I had a buddy of mine who said, you guys do almost too much," which I was like, okay.
Talk to him.
Yeah,
Tell
I don't
him.
know. I don't know. I think he felt like his inbox was getting bombarded, but hopefully we're providing just the right amount. But
I'm going to say something. If we get 50 new subscribers, I will put my life on the line, and we will have an exclusive The Good Fight sparring session with a world-class fighter who might be a former champion. So if we get 50 subscribers, Uncle Lukey will risk his health and his wealth to spar a fighter, and I'll probably get dropped. That'll be like the clip is like me on the ground crying and stuff. But the thumbnail, like I'm all busted up and stuff, and everyone's like, "Oh, hey, I told you he's soft."
Do it for the algorithm.
We're gonna do it for the algorithm, though. So that's just how we're gonna end it. Is if we get 50 more subs, I will get that W2 or W9 with a former world champion or maybe current world champion. We don't know. But that's a teaser. How do you like that, Jason? I'll come out of retirement, which I never even retired, to get, I don't know, what do I do? 3 rounds with somebody?
Yeah, it's the old Fury. I mean, you retired, but not really.
But yeah, so I'll give you a quick 3 rounds if we get 50 subs, 50 paid subs.
I'm in. That's commitment. That's why you make the big bucks, brother.
That's right, brother. So yeah, there we go. So you just keep us updated. That's an ongoing storyline. I will get in there, and this is the other treat. If I do spar somebody, I'm gonna wear a boxer outfit too. So I'll get like a Versace shirt to show up. We'll have the backstage thing. I'll have like a crew of people that just hype me up.
You better have a Boots backpack.
Well, I've been doing the Boots hat as a tribute to Boots. Have you been noticing that? Oh, I guess you haven't seen the clips, but I'm doing the Boots hat in the interviews. I'm doing like the sideways cap. Yeah, I'm doing, little Boots homage.
Tonight, once we get those videos up, tune in.
Yeah. He's one of the best fighters. It's like paying homage. I love Philly, man. Philly's it's like my 7th home. I've got a lot of homes, but Philly's another one of my homes. So that's like paying tribute. He's one of the better fighters. So I'm doing like the little backwards cap out of appreciation for Boots Ennis's win a couple months.
Love it. Love it. All right. That'll do it for us today on the Good Fight podcast. Thanks again to Lucas Cattell for joining us, joining me. And thanks to all of you for listening and for your questions. And don't forget to come back out tomorrow night. God, it's already Friday. Come back out tomorrow night.
TGIF, brother.
Yeah. TGF post-fight tomorrow night after the DAZN and TNT broadcasts. Lukey and I'll be back chopping it up. And again, we'll have on-site interviews from Vegas, some press conference stuff. And we might be joined by some other contributors to just play around for an hour. All right. Yeah. Thanks again, and we will see you at the fights.